I'm going to call the July 9th meeting of the school committee to order. We've got a member remote tonight, so we'll do everything via roll call. So Sarah, I'll start with you.
Here.
Tom?
Here.
Jeffrey?
Here.
Laura?
Here.
And Sean is here. I expect that Erin will join us momentarily, and I will announce her as such for the timestamp for Olivia's sake. All right, so let me take a quick walk through our agenda this evening, and then we'll jump right in. Expect it'll be a relatively short one. We will take public comment from the overwhelming crowd here in the library. We'll move into our consent agenda reports. In the new business section tonight, we have this listed on the agenda as review and approve policy ADF, the school district wellness program. This is a misunderstanding on my part. I thought we were sort of rubber stamping the existing policy. It turns out there are some edits, so we'll be doing a first reading tonight and not taking an approval vote, and then at our next meeting, we'll have this back on the agenda again for a second reading and an approval. We will then appoint Dr. Turner to our collaborative boards, both the SEAM Collaborative and the North Shore Education Consortium. Dr. Turner will take us through sort of a preview of the superintendent entry plan and his approach therein. We will have a discussion and approve the superintendent review timeline for this year. We'll take a look at our liaison and subcommittee assignments. We'll have some reallocation to do there with a new member joining us this year. The Mulberry Forest School has come back around asking for approval, so I wanted to sort of discuss that with the committee, and we'll talk more about that when we get there. And then we'll close out this evening with just sort of a brief discussion of the override process and the role the school committee may play, and the role the members would like to play in particular as well. So that's our agenda for this evening. Before I jump into public comment, though, I should acknowledge this is, a night of transition as Dr. Turner joins us for the first time formally in the school committee, for a school committee meeting, so welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
He's been here, what, a week?
Day 6.
Yeah, day 6, yeah. A week, 6 business days into the tenure, so jumping right in here with the school committee tonight. So with that, I will do the ceremonial call for public comment. No one?
On this side of the table.
Yeah, with Jeffrey. And Olivia, watching this back later, Erin's joining us at 7:03. Sorry, Erin, I don't mean to throw you under the bus. I'm just trying to make it easy for Olivia in the minutes.
I'm walking in late.
Yeah. All right, so we'll then move to the consent agenda. And is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda?
So we were just talking about arrival times. I didn't see the minutes showing when Dr. Durdka joined the meeting,
Oh, when I came in late after the concert at
Right.
Parker.
because some of the votes are 5-0 and then
Yeah.
6-0,
Good call. Yeah, good catch.
if we're trying to record it, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so let's do this then. So I'll make a friendly amendment to approve the minutes with that timestamp captured, and I'll work with Olivia to make sure that happens before we get the minutes posted.
Okay.
It's probably a good practice. Okay, any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, I'll move to the vote. Sarah, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's move to reports. And Dr. Turner, I'll start with you if you have a report this evening.
Well, thank you for the warm welcome. It has been a great start, as I just said, day 6 of here as superintendent of Reading Public Schools, and I am just walking into this meeting really energized. People have been extremely welcoming, gracious. Every meeting that I've attended, I really see the talent in this community, the commitment to kids, and the spirit. And so I am really overwhelmed with joy in terms of starting out here. I also just want to, at this point, I'll share more in my entry presentation, I've been into all but 2 schools at this point, and I just want to give a shout out to all of our custodians who are busily transitioning the buildings right now. They are looking good. There's some good projects that are happening in the buildings. Got to see some kids in terms of the camps and extra programs in ESY, which I'll talk about in a moment. And just also to our assistants who have been so welcoming as I've gotten to do. I've spent about 2 hours with each principal in the buildings I've been in, and the assistants have just been really amazing. And then finally, in terms of my thank yous, I just want to say a big thank you to Dr. Milchewski, who just was so gracious upon entering and gave me a shout out on my first day, wished me luck. And also, I don't know if there could be a smoother transition in terms of the ways in which he was very clear and supportive. We met weekly, and just a cheerleader for the community, for myself. And so it's clear he's an extremely talented and gifted leader who did great work here, and I just want to give a great thank you to him. In terms of some business going on in the district, the Let Grow Challenge is quickly underway, and a shout out to the Reading Children's Cabinet for launching it this summer. The challenge encourages children to build confidence, independence, and resilience by completing simple, age-appropriate activities throughout the community. Families can earn weekly prizes and end-of-summer raffle entries for participating. We just want to encourage families to stop by the superintendent's office to drop off their participation slips. We look forward to meeting families and students as they go through these adventures. And then thank you to all of the partners, Children's Cabinet, in the Children's Cabinet, including Reading Public Schools, the Reading Public Library, Reading Recreation, the Reading Coalition, Town Leadership, the Reading Police Department, and other community organizations for collaborating. I'll just give a shout out to our police department in the department head meeting with the town manager today. The police chief mentioned that they are awarding citations when they see people with bike helmets. They are awarding pizza and ice cream, and so I just encourage our students out there watching that if you want some more pizza and ice cream, wear your bike helmets. ESY is also is on its way, our extended school year. It started, the first day was on Monday. It goes through August 6th. We have 80 staff who are busily working, and Kimberly Bryson, who has been the ESY coordinator for the last 4 years. We have 211 students referred and 158 students participating, so that's great. The program spans across Birch, Rise, and RMHS. Kimberly running the program the last 4 years, it's allowed us to receive parent feedback and make effective changes to better support students. And we're looking forward to seeing the students all summer. I also want to give a shout out to our food services program. I had a great meeting with Catherine, and one of the first bits of great news that I got on the job was the expansion of our catering program. So we are supporting Reading YMCA for their summer camp. Families are utilizing our online ordering system with breakfast and lunch offering options. We have close to 300 families enrolled, both inside and outside the Reading community, and we're looking to increase this with other summer camps and neighboring communities in the future. I brought this up at the department heads meeting, and certainly there were a lot of departments who were interested in seeing what catering could look like with our food services program and other ways in which we can support other communities. So I think this is this is good for the community and a good source of revenue for the district. We are partnering with Woburn YMCA, Project Bread, Woburn Recreation Department to expand the USDA summer meal program. So that is very exciting. I finally just want to let you know that we have updates on some hires. Lisa Azarito is starting as an interim principal at Birch Meadow. We're excited to have her on. I've gotten to meet her. She has a strong commitment to the Birch community and is a very strong leader. She did a really nice job in terms of a search process for the interim assistant principal at Birch Meadow. And so we have hired Heather Marsh, who I had opportunity to meet. She's coming from Needham Public Schools, is extremely strong, experienced assistant principal in elementary schools. And so we look forward to working with them. Michelle Ophelia started her new role as RISE director. Her and I are going to have our first meeting tomorrow. But RISE seems like the RISE program in the summer seems like it's moving along really well. And then just in terms of our update on our HR director, as you may remember, we reposted the position. We have many promising candidates. We, for the first time, put the posting on LinkedIn. I think we probably tripled the number of applicants by doing that. And so I think that was a good strategy on our part. Our hope is we'll be interviewing in 2 weeks, July 21st, with the hope of appointing someone by the end of that week or into the following week.
Great, thank you. Let's move to liaison reports, and Sarah, I will start with you.
No report.
Tom?
The only report, it sort of leads to the last topic on the agenda, is meeting schedule coming up for Select Board and FinCom. Select Board is meeting on the 14th, the 22nd, and August 4th. They have to vote on the 4th before they send the override material to the state for the 5th. And Finance Committee is meeting on the 15th. So 14th, 15th, 22nd, and 4th, as it stands right now.
The select board is also posted for the FinCom meeting. I don't know if there's anything specific on that agenda that would,
It's override centric, so
Okay. I mean, do we want to
We-
post, is my question.
that's up to Mr. Brandt, but I would say we probably should personally, but that's
Yeah.
a conversation toward the end of the meeting, probably.
Yeah, let's hold off. Let's hold that to the end of the meeting. Thank you. Okay, Jeffrey?
The Facilities Naming Committee has a couple of vacations that had to be scheduled around, so it looks like those meetings are going to be the end of August, the 17th and 24th at 6 PM, presently on the calendar.
Aaron?
No report.
Laura?
No report.
I have, we'll talk about the override and that piece later. One really piece of good news, which you may have all caught wind of at this point, but the bids came back for the Killam School substantially below what we were expecting. And most of that accrues to the overage against the sort of cap on dollars per square foot, which means most of it reduces the town's exposure. So we may be borrowing like north of 25% less than we expected to fund that project. We were looking at 85 million for the town share. You know, we're looking at maybe 21, 22, maybe even a little bit more off of that based on the bids that came in. So fantastic news, obviously great news for taxpayers. And you know, not as good news for the MSBA. They only save like a few $100,000 on this, but we'll save quite a bit as a result of the way that formula works. So really good news there, and so that it's moving forward. The bid was, you know, sort of accepted at the last meeting, so exciting progress there. So, okay. With that, let's move into new business. So we'll start with policy ADF, which is our school district wellness program, or our wellness policy, I suppose. Again, we posted this as an approval. We won't be able to do that tonight, so we'll treat this as the first reading. So with that, I will move to Laura for the reading.
Okay. This is a reading of the revised RPS District Wellness Program.
To waive the reading.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second to that?
Second.
I'll give it to Jeffrey. We'll vote to move to waive the reading. Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Okay. So now we can certainly discuss the policy. You know, I think Olivia sent this out a couple days ago, so hopefully folks had a chance to take a look at it. The background here is we are required to update this every 3 years. So the District Wellness Committee or Council, I can't remember what the title is, committee, thank you, has met to make some recommended edits. That's what's in your packet today. And those of course would be reflected in our policy. The idea is those are reflected in our policy to sync up, or in our policy to sync up with the District Wellness Council's committee's recommendations and state law updates and so forth. So that's sort of the context. Again, we'll have another meeting to review this at our August meeting, but I'll open the floor for any comments that folks have based on their first perusal of some of the changes here. Go ahead, please, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I had sent some comments in by email to Dr. Turner and Olivia. I'm not happy with the way that the committee is set up. It consists of at least one, and then lists a bunch of this as one of each, or one. I feel like other places where we've have committees lined up, it's clear that it's one of this, one of this, one of the, and one, where it's sort of like bulleted as separate items. It's also odd that in the first part, it talks about the committee, and it says a food service representative, and later it says the wellness coordinator is specifically the director of food services, and then only members of the Wellness Committee may serve as coordinators. So it sort of, if you follow that
Circular,
through, it
yeah.
means the Director of Food Services must be, in fact, the food service representative on the committee, or else you're violating another part of the policy. So I feel like the committee needs to be set up with those 4 specific coordinators, and then additional members as necessary or appropriate should be listed out as, and, you know, are we trying to get a parent guardian who is not a school committee member, or is it okay if a school committee member who is also a parent serves, you know, are we trying to get a certain number of people on the committee? I felt that just wasn't spelled out clearly in this document.
I think those are good clarifications. And so you've already provided those to Olivia and Dr. Turner, you said,
I
those
a
recommendations?
comment, I didn't actually
Yeah, sure.
recommend a
No,
specific text
that's
there.
fair, okay.
We think it's very fair feedback, and so we can bring it back to the drafters and for Ned for you for next time.
And another note is, it says school committee member, but when I glanced at the liaison reports, I don't see wellness committee.
Aaron, is it?
Was it on the list, though?
It should
That
be.
was in the packet?
It should be. She has been it for a while.
No, I've been it for a couple of
I
years
didn't, s-
now.
so I
Yeah,
just
we probably
glanced
haven't
at it right
updated in a
now, but I
while.
didn't see it there, so.
I used the ones we reviewed last year as the starting point, and we must not have had it on the list last year either
I
then.
think we appointed her in the middle of a year, and so it kind of has slipped through the updates.
Okay,
So that's probably why it has happened, and she's just been hanging out there for a while.
I come when they tell me.
well,
Technically,
until otherwise reappointed, right? You're
Yes.
technically the school
Yes.
committee member, so.
but yes, it would be good to add it to this
Yeah,
this
that's-
centralized memo that we have.
There probably are some other hanging chads out there where we've made appointments to sort of lesser-known committees.
Expression I haven't heard in a long time.
Well, yeah, probably not an appropriate, not appropriate for the context
what
in
you
which I
mean,
used
though.
it either, but, yeah, there are probably a few other odds and ends out there that we've appointed, you know, mid-year that are sort of below the radar. But, okay. Any other feedback, you know, here at this first pass on the policy?
It doesn't actually track changes against the original. There are some changes in here that are not tracked. I have the original if somebody wants me to go in and try to make some track changes properly. I appreciate that the members that did that probably took a copy from something else that didn't have the original with Word that could be done, but it's missing some things in that regard. I
Can you
do-
clarify? So the highlighted parts are not the changes?
It's not all the changes.
Oh.
There are other changes that are in there that are not highlighted.
Okay.
Just as a small example, the second paragraph under nutrition guidelines, it says all children who participate. That's not in the original document, on the current document.
At all,
At
so
all.
not just the second
Not
sentence,
just-
but the
yeah,
whole paragraph.
Yeah, so, you know, the way that nutrition guidelines break down is different than, and I haven't finished going through all of this, unfortunately, my own fault, but there are some issues there that need to be remedied. Dr. Corum's feedback is on stuff that hasn't changed for the most part. So I think that's something we also can look at and see if there's stuff we want to clean up in addition to some of that feedback as things go, so. I also thought I found it interesting, just as I was reading it through, that there's a checklist of getting a well, but it's not a mandatory, it's my understanding. Right, so some of the stuff that's in here, like, we're adding it so we meet the checklist, but do we have to in all these cases? And what physical, like, what does this limit us to in certain cases? Like, I'm just gonna, a practical example, right? We're coming up on an override. We might face issues where we have to start crunching numbers a little bit in certain places. Do we have to do 12 hours of training in certain places, 10 hours of training, and 8 hours of training in other places? Maybe we do, from a regulatory perspective. I would love to know for sure. Do we have to give certain types of food options, right, as an absolute requirement versus this is what a best practice would be? I understand that. But if we put it in policy, it becomes a have to. And I just want us to be a little cautious of some of those things. That might be something that becomes an issue for us if we have financial constraints over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever the case might be. So, again, I read the checklist. I understand that there's a reason why all these are in here, because a lot of these I was like, why is this in here? And then it's in the checklist. So it's obvious why it's in there. But again, is that a mandatory addition, or is it a recommended addition? And if it's recommended, I think we should be careful about adding it as mandatory to our policy.
Help me understand though, like, isn't food services a program because the base meals are covered by the government?
USDA, yeah. If we have reimbursement, yeah.
Aren't we, I don't want to say running a profit, but isn't it something that's relatively like not costing us much to run?
As it stands right now,
Self-sustaining would be.
as
Yeah,
it stands right
okay.
now, it's self-sustaining, but who knows what may happen, right? And policy means that you're expecting that no matter what happens, you're gonna do it, right? It's right under regulation, which is right under law. You should be doing policy.
So
Right.
if I could jump in, like,
Yep.
you know, if you look at minimally processed meal options will be available versus the next bullet that says environmentally friendly practices implemented where appropriate, right? Considered and implemented where appropriate. So does it make sense, in fact, to make minimally processed meal options will be available as appropriate, or, you know, we will
When
endeavor
possible,
to, when
or,
possible.
right,
yeah,
some qualifications to certain
Right.
things that give us a little bit more flexibility in the worst case. Not that we don't want to make these
Yeah,
as options, but to give us more flexibility. It's the will, should, must type conversation
Yeah.
as we look at the language in it that I think we want to be cautious of.
I think it's a fair point. I will say, though, I don't, in practice, any sort of severe budgetary constraints are not going to pop up overnight. So if we find ourselves in a position where, cutting corners, for lack of a better word, on school lunches, maybe not cutting corners, cutting costs on school lunches is is a path that we want to go down, we have the opportunity to revisit the policy if it's necessary to
Will
accommodate
people
that.
remember? That, I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's,
I think while we're doing it is the right time to,
We are the people. No?
we may be the people at that point in time, right? I mean, I think that's,
And that's fair, I just, the flip side of this, Tom, is if we make everything where appropriate and make it optional, it becomes optional, and then it can also be given up for convenience, right?
then we can find other language that we want to put in there, right? That makes it not as convenient, but gives appropriate financial flexibility if necessary. I mean, ultimately, I'm one of six, right? So you all can say, no, we want to make sure this is mandatory. That's fine, right? I'm just raising it as a point of something to think about and make sure we're careful with it as we go into it and with eyes wide open about it.
I absolutely understand what you're trying to say, and that how thoughtful we have to be about everything moving forward. It gives me a little bit of an ick factor of like, are we gonna sacrifice the children's nutrition to save a few dollars? That it's just like a visceral reaction I'm having to it. I know that's not what you're implying, but our food services has come so far.
Totally, I know.
And
right?
what they have done is so incredibly impressive in terms of what is available and how well nurtured and fed I think the students are compared to where we used to be. So I sort of hesitate to fiddle too much with the language because I do think they wrote it to reflect not just like must do, but what's in practice and what's been established for them. But I can't answer for, I can't say for sure, like I can't answer for them. They would have to tell you what, Mary probably knows exactly what's required, but.
I'm sure. If we look closely at it, Erin, a lot of the language is almost directly pulled from the checklist, almost directly. With that said, we have, the staff has done a phenomenal job of achieving most of what's already on here, if not all of what's already on here. But like farm to school, that's expensive when the push comes to shove. It doesn't mean we're gonna let quality drop off necessarily, but there are things on here that, if push comes to shove and let's say the federal government stops giving a certain amount of money. Okay, fortunately, the state is doing a lot through SOA, but if the state says, okay, SOA needs to go more towards roads because our roads are falling apart, It can still be used in that space, and we're gonna give less to education. Okay, now then, are we still gonna be able to do all of these things or not? You know, maybe we then start charging and we still do all these things. There are options, right? I'm not saying they're not options, but like, eyes wide open. That's all I'm saying.
So let me suggest this. I think we've all sort of made good points here, and we all sort of see where everybody's coming from. Maybe, Tom, if you have, when we come back for the second reading, if you have language you'd suggest, which is clear about our intent, but provides a measure of flexibility that you're comfortable with, we can certainly review that the next time around, rather than just sort of going back and forth conceptually, I
Yep.
guess, at this point.
Yep, that's fair.
Okay. Any other?
A few other grammatical things that, I feel like I wanted to, Tom, you had some, was it Grammarly or something that you used to have? There are things like wellness committee, in one place, committee is capitalized, in other places it's not.
That's also not correct in this versus what's in the official policy. Like
Yeah.
somebody
So-
tried to copy paste or
Yeah.
something out of the policy to make these edits is my interpretation of what happened.
Yeah.
So in the actual one, it's capitalized properly or not capitalized properly.
Okay.
So that's fine. So we should do what we think is proper, and if we need to mark it as an edit, then we'll mark it as an edit. So I think those are, great options to share with Olivia offline. And
Jeff, if
get
you
those
want to
reflected.
send me the feedback you sent.
Okay.
If I can take this version that's the official version, redline it versus what they've
Okay.
provided, and I can then try to do a different, well, change tracking doesn't allow me to do a different color because I'm the same author, but I
Yeah.
can note
Okay.
it that it's your feedback as part of it.
So can I just, what I'm hearing is, we're going to report back on on Jeffrey's question around who is represented on the committee.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to you on the question of what do we have to change versus what are recommended changes. And then to come back with a document that has track changes, accurate, back to you.
And I think it sounds like you'll also get some grammatical input from
Great,
potentially multiple members.
thank you.
All right, anything else on this for tonight?
No?
All right, we'll move to collaborative board appointments. We've got 2 collaboratives, which annually we appoint anybody to. Historically, it's been the superintendent. So I guess I'll open it up for discussion to see if anybody has an alternative suggestion at this point before asking Laura to make a couple of motions.
Do we ask the nominee whether he's?
Nope.
No choice.
I will say I got to go to the first one, and I made clear that I was not an official member of the board, but it was
Yet.
great to, yet.
Yet.
It was great to be, to see some old friends, so, and be a part of 2 great organizations.
All right, why don't we move to the first motion then?
All right. Move to appoint Dr. Turner to the SEAM Collaborative Board.
Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Aaron. Any discussion? Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Let's move to the second motion.
Move to appoint Dr. Turner to the North Shore Education Consortium Board.
Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Aaron. Any discussion? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. Okay. All right, let's move to, you know what, Rob? Can we get, we got logged out, or, I need a password. I guess we're not technically, we're locked out, not logged out, I think would be the appropriate thing. All right, so we'll move to reviewing preview of Dr. Turner's entry plan. And really, it's sort of the approach and timeline on the entry plan is probably the more precise language here. So let me go ahead and share. And Dr. Turner, I can hand it to you if you have any,
Yeah.
if you have any opening comments here while I get this full screen.
Great. So this will be my 4th time doing an entry plan in a new role, and so I am thrilled, as I shared in my intro, to be doing it here. I'm also excited that the new superintendent's induction program through MASS, also part of the program is to guide superintendents in terms of an entry plan. And so having known that, I got the chance to look at Dr. Milichowski's entry plan presentation, so there'll be a lot of similarities. As I had created mine, it was great to see that we were pretty aligned in terms of what the process is going to look like. So tonight, the plan is to show you, the community, what an entry plan is, what its intent is. I don't know if this is working. There we go. What the intent of an entry plan is, and then the timeline for the process. Having been a instructor for new and aspiring principals, I got to teach about entry planning a lot in master's programs, and I would say the best resource for entry plan process is a book called Entry by Barry Gents and Jerome Murphy. And they refer to the line, hit the ground learning as opposed to hit the ground running. And so in any leadership role, and I think this is apropos of the next topic we'll be talking about around override, is to make sure that leaders are not moving too fast without learning about the community. I also think that entry planning is a nice formal process to allow for the community to reflect upon itself, where it is in terms of transition, and it really sets us up well as we start to develop a new strategic plan for the district. This book, what I like about it is it's grounded in data collection and inclusivity in terms of ensuring that all members of the community have access to be able to provide multiple feedback in multiple different ways. And it can be open-ended, which is great, and can be adapted. And so purpose from my role is to be curious, to focus on learning as opposed to coming up with solutions. And so as I have met with people, and each of you are members that I've met with in part of my pre-entry process, while during my interview I got to talk a lot, this process was more about me listening than talking or coming up with solutions. And as I said, this is about kind of understanding what our processes are, what our systems are, what works, what's our philosophy, what do we disagree on, and that will help us to improve certain processes. So for example, if some community members believe that things happen a certain way and other members believe it happens a different way, like that's something we should probably address to figure out. If we have policies that are not consistent with each other, how do we make sure that we're improving that? So it helps us to set up what our next steps are. And so this, my plan, my hope for this plan is to really make this a year-long process. And so I have started it already, what we're referring to as the pre-entry process. Really, I would say I drafted up bullet points for my entry the day after of your vote of me to getting this job. And so it really is an important part of, I think of what's going to structure me in terms of my role and my responsibilities, and help me to sort of better understand the community and help us to understand the community. So the pre-entry process, which I'll spend a little more time on in a moment, started in April, goes through into July, and then now we're in the listening and learning. So this is sort of like the more formal part of the process. I go to the superintendent's conference on Monday, in which I have my first new superintendent's induction program class, and the first item on the agenda is our entry plan. So I'm sort of ahead of the game here a little bit with the process. I feel comfortable having done entry for a while in several different roles and mentoring a lot of administrators. In fact, that entry book I've recommended to our Birch new administration in terms of utilizing it. I think it's a very useful book for all administrators. But nevertheless, starting the listening and learning process now, and it's a long process. It'll go into the winter. There's not a fixed date for it, but it sort of feels like that's a nice long process to really make sure that a lot of different listening activities have occurred. And then we'll really dive into what did we learn? What's the analysis? Come back to you with sort of thoughts, and then to start setting us up, which will then lead to our strategic plan process. Hopefully there'll be enough data, and with the community's feedback, maybe we need to get more data, but to build that strategic plan from there, but this hopefully will be the setup for that. So the pre-entry process, this is just sort of some highlights. There were many steps. I think I did about 10 full days of entry planning before July 1st in terms of meetings with folks and looking at data, looking at I would say Sarah Hardy and Jen Steese have been amazing at just sharing slide decks with me, watching old school committee meetings to really get a sense of the community and what's going on. Dr. Milczewski and I met weekly, which was, as I share, extremely useful. I met with each of you, I think, around an hour and a half to 2 hour meetings with each of you individually over coffee. I met with all of the central office leadership, and now I'm in the process of meeting with all members of the central staff. I met with Jess Bailey, our RTA president, participating in the director search for HR, learning about that process, as well as the RISE director process. As many of you saw me, I was at town meeting. I attended budget meetings as well, both with the town manager, and then observed some of the meetings that were more public on YouTube. And I got my entry survey out before school got out, and I think at this point I have almost 200 responses to the entry survey. So I think that's moving along well. And I'll just put a note to that is that I anticipate sending it out a couple more times. The group that we do not have responses from are students, and so I've talked to Jess Callanan about ways in which we can get student participation in September. I'd also love to get some middle school students to participate in that as well, so that hopefully we have a good plan for that. But that will go through September, into mid-September. The listening and learning process, which is happening now, there's a lot of different steps, but I'll just share sort of broadly. We pushed the meeting with each principal so that they had, during the time when they had downtime, and we could really invest some time together. So each of these meetings have been about 2 hours. It's included getting to know them, understanding what are their needs, what are their wants, what's working well in their school, to understand their school culture. I would say, for example, I've already learned that there's a lot of sense of individual pride among our schools, and learning about those different unique cultures. For example, as you probably know, like all of our elementary schools have different schedules, our middle schools have different schedules, and I was curious about that, and they were able to explain why we have that. And so that was, instead of making a judgment, asking questions was helpful information there. And we are now setting up meetings with open office hours, which Olivia is setting up for me, so people will be able to set up times to just come in and meet me, anyone in the community, whether they work for the district or families of the district or just live in the community. And I've met with our PTO, several of our PTO leadership who are going to organize help invite me to their summer events, and also set up some formal community meetings with families. They also were able to share with me some of the things that are hot on their mind. One of the most important, while it's 95 degrees outside, they brought up snow removal. And so I said I was very grateful that they brought up that issue in July, so that we can kind of come up with a good plan. And I've already made some steps to talk to our town manager and plan to talk to Joe Russo about how do we improve snow removal on our sidewalks for our students. And then meetings with various department heads, who have been really welcoming, and we have a nice plan with the police to meet with our youth officers and to start talking about our memorandum of understanding with the police. And so these are just, really organic, but also useful ways of learning. And it's also about my learning, being a new superintendent, going to the superintendent's conference, learning what's going on in other communities, particularly as we anticipate a possible budget conversation over the next few months, learning what's going on in other communities. About that will be a part of my learning and things I can bring back to the community. As I shared, the analysis sharing component will start around February. That will be working with our data team around what are some patterns we're starting to see, what are some trends, and be able to report back to you about what we learned, to get your feedback on how to move with that data, which will then lead us to a planning process to start setting up our strategic plan in our district-wide goals, and coming up with a timeline for that. It's clear looking at, so Sarah Hardy and Dr. Milczewski worked together in their entry plans and were able to develop a strategic plan together. And so having Dr. Hardy on staff here, Assistant Superintendent, I think it's going to be really useful as we start to develop our strategic plan, so that my hope is that the community feels like we are continuing with the great work that's been going on the last 5 years, and I think the strategic plan will be a great way of demonstrating that. I will just say, in terms of things that I've already seen, I shared earlier that the excitement and the spirit, the extreme progress has been of this community is very, very clear in terms of our data, and in terms of commitment to all students. That includes sort of how we are supporting students and how we are thinking about their well-being, both academically and in their wellness, and SEL skill development. Ahead of thinking about some of our budgetary questions, I asked Olivia to come up with, to share a folder of old school committee meetings from 2017, 18, and 19 around the override planning, and I will say that our slide decks are much cleaner and crisper than they were nearly 10 years ago, but it was helpful to learn a lot about what was going on in the community, what the community was thinking then. I'm a history person, and so I love all things to learn about our community. I think it tells us a lot about how we can be successful presently, but some of the things that I learned during that time was clearly where the community was struggling academically. For example, Joshua Eaton was a level 3 school then, which was fascinating to me, and to see, after meeting with Caitlin Shelburne, just how incredible that school community has moved over the years under her leadership and with all the commitment of the staff and the community there. So I think that was, that's just in and of itself great lessons to learn as a new superintendent about where we were and to think about where we're going. And so my next steps is to continue to communicate with you, with the community about the entry plan, to share the entry plan publicly, which will look similar to this slide deck with any feedback from you, and to regularly update you and reminders about the survey with the community. And that is my preview.
Questions, comments?
How will the open office hours be advertised? I know that we have always a giant crowd here and everybody rushing to watch these videos on YouTube. But what's going to get the word out for those?
So I think that there's already a really strong external communication that Olivia's been sharing, and so we'll continue with that, so people hopefully will feel like the communication is going to be consistent, and so it'll be through our communication to families. And I would say that's probably the predominant way. If we feel, having met with the PTOs, one of the things that we're thinking about is having something I was familiar with in Newton was a more centralized sort of regular PTO meeting with all of the PTOs, maybe quarterly. And so asking them to sort of push communication out could be a great strategy. But I think it's a great question, and I really want to maximize the ears and of it, the message. So if you have other ways that work, I would be certainly all ears on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Love that you included a works cited too.
Thank you.
You looking at me like I'm supposed to ask a question?
Waiting to see if
Not,
you
I guess not a question, but I mean, a reminder, a point, I think. When you and I sat down and talked, and and I also mentioned it during our decision day, right? I think there's some specific targeted groups of people in town that we need to make sure we sit down with. So, you know, as and when you're prepared to start those conversations, if you need my help to bring people together, let me know who that is, or let me know when you're ready for that, and we can figure out who that is. So we can start building those bridges and ensure success for both parties.
Absolutely. So my goal is to be a yes to any invitation. So in addition to be proactive, I think, in terms of the communities that you're referencing. And so I certainly anticipate reaching out to you. I also reached out to Carla Nazar actually just today, so that we can meet and to see if we can facilitate some conversation. So I would appreciate your support on that and look forward to meeting with people. Absolutely. Thank you.
I had just a comment and a question. Comment somewhat follows up on Tom's in that it's about the community connection piece. I'm sure you would already think to do this, but, you know, sharing this with all of us in the format it's in makes a ton of sense. You know, we have the context and understand sort of what it's about. You know, when you share it with the community, I think you'll want to think through like the specific questions you want to, you know, that you want them to reflect on. Like what exactly are you asking them to do in reacting to this? Just a suggestion. And then my question was, I tried to find Dr. Milichewski's presentation, but our packets don't go back that far. Is the timeline consistent with the one?
Exact.
It is, yeah, it felt like it probably was, so, okay.
In fact, I didn't cite it, so Laura, please, but I actually copied and pasted his timeline.
You
but
did
was
cite it
already-
verbally. Yeah. You did caveat it up front that it would look very similar.
It's in
so.
fact exactly with exact terms from his slide deck.
Perfect. Yeah, I, from the minutes, I could tell that the phases were the same, but the timing wasn't clear, so thank you. All right, anything else on this item? All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move to discussion and approval of the superintendent review timeline. So the context here is, you know, we need to determine on what timeline we want to review Dr. Turner. Historically, and the MASC, or the MASS, no, sorry, the DESI guidance would be for a new superintendent. In fact, the superintendent, their first 3 years is their guidance to be reviewed initially, annually, I should say. With Dr. Milichewski, we did opt for an annual review that first year. I think we pretty quickly moved to an every
First
other
couple of
year.
years was annual,
First 2 years were annual?
at
Okay.
least the first 2 years.
Yeah, but we did certainly follow the guidance and suggestions to do an annual review in that first year. So the sort of question before us tonight is, you know, do we want to go down that same path, and then what timing are we looking for? You'll see in the memo that I think I suggested January for the formative and June for the summative. In Dr. Milichewski's case, we actually went with February, and I remember us having a long, drawn-out debate about whether January or February was enough time to have a real, you know, sort of evaluation, a sufficient evaluation period. So that would, I suppose, be the other question is, you know, what do we want to target for the formative review, balancing enough time in role with enough of a delta between the formative and the summative for it to be meaningful. So let me stop there, open it up for conversation, and then we'll make a motion as appropriate.
I mean, I think it all relates to when you think you'll have goals, because what we run into is like, we don't have a lot to measure, right? Like we don't, you know, by the time we've approved the goals, and then we're supposed to like comment on progress on goals that are maybe only a couple months in. So I think that's why like February sometimes feels like at least there's like a little more time to, but I also think the formative is not meant to be a completion of goals either. So, you know, if people felt strongly about wanting to do something in January.
If I remember correctly, the goals we established, fortunately, we don't have to do this that often, or we haven't had to do this that often, but if I remember correctly, the goals that we established in the early going for Dr. Milichewski were around successful participation in NSIP, progressing the entry plan, right? It was, you know, they weren't, you know, it wasn't fix the delta between MCAS scores at Coolidge and Parker. It wasn't, sort of specific.
I probably can go back and get them for us.
Yeah, I'm sure we can find
I
them, but they were.
have them already.
I'm sure you did.
And they're
very
remembering correctly, they were generally in the
they're
vein of like sort of six,
So the first
making
year.
sure you follow through.
Very
with
much
the
connected to
key-
the, they were very
key
much connected,
activities.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
They're very much connected to the new superintendent's program and the entry plan. And so I would just say that so long as, if you were okay with the learning phase being through January, that I probably could be able to, I mean, I would ask if I could present to you on an update on the entry, if it's going to be part of my goal, then would allow for you to vote, or you to review me in February.
Looking at the timelines, while January seems normal from a calendar year perspective, the school year doesn't really start till September, so pushing it from a September through January also gets us through budget cycle, right? February, then outside of budget cycle, gives us time to do some review and thought process after that. Gives him a chance to replay what his learning cycle has provided. And then June, is, okay, you've gone through a full year now. And I think the one thing about that is we do want to start the process in late May, early June, and finish it in mid to late June. So don't try and finish it in early June like we've done with some of the recent ones. So we'll just have to account for that from a scheduling and timeline perspective, too.
Yeah.
We have a chance to do as much of the school year as possible.
Yeah, because that's a lengthy one.
On the goals, can I, sorry, Erin, I didn't mean
No,
to
go
interrupt.
ahead, I'm just remembering it takes weeks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, on the goals, can I suggest maybe a bit of a hybrid approach, which is maybe even at our next meeting, we sort of document some of the ones that we know are going to be part of the goal structure, right? Again, NSIP, successfully progressing the entry plan. And, when we get to, January, whatever the appropriate timeline is, where the entry plan has revealed some of the priorities for this year, or for the, latter half of the year, then maybe we augment those. But, personally, I don't see any harm in sort of documenting for documentation's sake that, the things we know are going to be on on your table, or on your table, right?
I have them drafted, so I'm happy to share them with you at the next meeting or in September. So,
Okay.
and they are similar to what Dr. Mazecheski's was.
All right, so I'm hearing February. I knew I should have just gone with what we decided last time, so we were probably going to end up there anyway. February I'm not hearing any opposition or any disagreement that we should do a one-year cycle, correct? Okay.
Need to do 1 year.
And February for the formative, and June to complete the summative. And Tom, your point's well taken. Obviously, we have to work backwards from when we want them to be complete to allow enough time for the process, particularly on the summative. Okay. Can we take a motion, Laura?
Sure. So motion to approve the timeline for this year's superintendent review process, is that what you
Let's,
for?
I think the language was something like motion to approve a one-year review cycle with a
Okay, move to approve a one-year review timeline for the superintendent with a formative review to be completed in February and a summative in June.
Second.
Seconded by Tom. Any further discussion? All right, we'll move to the vote. Sarah?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Sean, yes. Okay, thank you, everyone. All right, let's go to liaison and subcommittee appointments, and let me see if I can share here. Easier if we look at this.
The memo here has the wrong date, just so you know.
Oh, does it?
It says July 10th.
All right, so pretend you didn't read this until tomorrow.
Okay.
Which memo says July 10th?
The-
Oh, at our July 10th meeting. Oh, that means I can't even blame it on Olivia, because that's the part that I wrote. Olivia does the date at the top. She got it right. Okay, good.
Can I just share, I just got a text message that people have a very hard time listening to us on the video, so.
Are they?
I think there's only one other person watching, but just to speak into our
That
mics. so.
person is.
Sarah, are you having a problem, or is it RCTV that's having a problem?
Say that again, Tom.
Are you having
Not a good sign.
I can hear most people pretty well. There's a few people that are a little more muted.
All right, it might be that we're feeling sort of casual, and like, speaking for myself, I'm kind of like leaning back and stuff tonight, so.
Yeah.
we'll try to engage.
People closer to the mics or louder.
All right, put on your stage voices,
All right,
everybody.
We'll do a better job of engaging with the mics here. All right, let me pull down one chair and move to another.
Whatever that.
Yeah, that's just for the RCTV.
All right, and I apologize, I do see a typo here. Left some text in that top box. So what's in your memo in the packet is my best understanding / recollection / reflection of where we stand currently on liaison and committee assignments. So obviously, we want to review this annually. It's particularly important in a year like this one where we have some turnover. There are a handful of vacancies created by, Carla's departure. So, certainly one approach is Jeffrey slots into some of those, but, we shouldn't assume that Jeffrey's interested in all the same things Carla was. And it's also obviously an opportunity for others as well to, redistribute or explore different things or, whatever your interest might be. So let me open it up there. If anybody has any particular, desires or outcomes in terms of this, I'll just open the floor and we'll kind of see where it takes us.
I enjoy being on the finance committee, so I, wouldn't mind, although I see you and Tom are in there already. I don't know if either one of you has had enough on the finance as a finance committee liaison. I would be willing to serve on the Board of Library Trustees. I'm not particularly interested in the permanent building committee or bylaw in terms of slotting into those vacant spots.
Okay, feedback from others. Tom, do you have how are you feeling about Finance Committee? I can't remember if that's one that we've historically made a point of attaching the chair to, or if that's just Select Board.
Select Board is the one we've historically made a point of attaching the chair to.
Yeah.
I'm fine to give up Finance Committee. I mean, there's not much that I wouldn't be able to report on or do anyway. I mean, their meeting schedule is not, it is, and there's not, we don't sit there and advise the Finance Committee as our role, right? It's just we'll show up and report back here. So in that regard, it doesn't really matter. So if you want to put Jeff in that, that's from my perspective, that's fine. Sean and you as chair probably should still be there, just from a logistical perspective in my mind. So I'm good with that, if that's what people want to do. Is there even a charter review committee anymore, Sean, or is it defunct now?
I don't remember if it's formally sunset or not. I think it probably sunset after the report to town meeting, but I'll confirm that.
Okay. I have been remiss with Children's Cabinet. I don't know if we're going to carry it forward or not. They've unfortunately switched most of the meetings to the daytime, and there's no way I can join those. So I don't know if anybody has flexibility or not, but if you're interested, I can give that one up, unfortunately. That makes it
How often do they meet?
once a quarter
Oh, okay.
primarily. And it may adjust. It is tied to our current goal set as it stands. So, it should still carry on as far as I know. Dr. Stice pretty much is the chair of it for the time being. We used to have another person who helped coordinate it, which made it more of a night meeting, but with mostly daytime staff running it now. It's a daytime meeting for the most part. They do a lot of good work. I just can't continue with it from a daytime perspective.
I could probably take that on.
Also,
Children's Cabinet?
Sean, I don't know if you want to give up policy subcommittee, and because Dr. Quorum clearly has an interest in policy. He didn't say it out loud, but
Yeah,
you were kind of a secondary anyway.
I was a break glass in case of emergency
Backup.
member.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we can go back to a 3-member policy committee if Jeff replaces you on that, unless you want to actually stay
I
there.
am happy to let that one go. Well, if Dr. Quorum's
Yeah,
interested, yeah, I figured it might be. Okay. Okay.
And to that end, when we meet next, I'll probably want to pass the chair gavel, because I've been crazy on that in terms of not getting stuff done. I do want to stay with it, but whoever wants to be chair, I can talk through the process we've done, and how I go about reviewing things and pulling things together and stuff like that, which has always been my intent as well. I figured you're pointing in that direction. So Dr. Coram might become chair of that too, we'll see. But we can have that
Right
conversation.
up your alley, Jeffrey,
Yes.
come on. I'm happy to contribute, but.
Which leaves us with bylaw committee. I don't know how often that meets, depending on the frequency. I think it's mostly night meetings too, but I mean, if we need somebody on there, I'd be willing to probably be on there. Might be good to, from a balance perspective in that committee too, to have another voice in that space.
In this bylaw, I mean, I think that appointment's an actual voting member. That's not a liaison role.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Thoughts from others? So I agree. I think that, as I see, if we were to just take the feedback or the input received so far, that leaves us with a vacancy on bylaw committee, which we just talked about, Tom, and then the second seat on the PBC.
Why does the PBC need 2 school committee members?
I believe that is specified in the PBC membership, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Sarah?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And it's been mostly, I mean, I guess maybe something we can talk about, Sean, it's mostly been Killam stuff.
Right,
So it's really just been Carla.
yeah. But, no, I guess what I'm getting at is, in our, I can't remember if it's a bylaw or the charter that establishes the PBC,
Yes,
does it require it to have 2 school committee members?
I believe it's required to have 2, yeah.
Okay. In practice, that's a big committee, and, we don't whoever those members are don't necessarily need to attend every time for them to have quorum and successful conversations, but
You're not a member of the committee,
it's
right?
not a member.
No.
It's a,
The committee is 5 members with 2 associates, and you,
So it's 2 liaisons?
yeah, that's what I was, I mean, I don't think we, I'm trying to find
maybe it's not a
it.
requirement, maybe it's just what we have done maybe we just did it because of the,
I was just pulling up the charter and I'm
because of
going
the
to pull up the
Killam-
bylaws, because I don't think it's actually,
Yeah, like I get 2.
yeah, Sarah, is this just a remnant
I
of
feel
when,
like it was 2 prior to Killam, though.
I don't remember.
all right, Tom's gonna try to look it up here.
bring it up real quick, so.
Yeah, and I agree, I
know
mean,
what's
obviously,
going on
most of the relevant content is around Killam,
They were
and,
like restructuring in September, and then I never heard anything again.
right,
They're like.
which,
actively
for the most part, they cover during KSBC meetings at this point, so. All right, Tom's looking it up.
Consisting of 5 permanent members, notwithstanding blah, 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 temporary members of each project.
Oh, yeah, no,
There's
the membership
appointments.
is appointed by the,
The membership is appointed by the appointment committee of.
me, select board chair,
Right, and the town moderator.
yeah.
But there is no regulated, liaison necessarily, so.
So I would say, since this really just serves as a liaison, like, who's on point if they need to reach out to the school committee kind of thing, unless folks are falling all over themselves to be in that role, Sarah, we could probably just leave you there.
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we specifically upped it to 2 because we knew Killam was coming.
Yeah, maybe.
And it was already gonna be aligned to before Killam building
Right.
came about too.
Okay, so, others we haven't heard from, any preferences, anything you're looking to offload or switch up?
How's the student advisory committee stuff going, Aaron?
I didn't realize that was my assignment this week. So I'll reach out to Jess.
Aaron, I'll tell you, I thought it was my assignment, and so,
I was like, I didn't get a single message about a meeting or anything.
no,
so I-
and it was a slog this last year. That group was, frankly, not as, engaged. The students that came as liaisons were fantastic, but the group as a whole, and having student advisory committee sort of dedicated meetings was difficult this year, this past year, so.
But I'm happy to reach out to Jess and say, please include me.
Yeah,
And then would I be the one to help coordinate? Because 4 times a year, they're supposed to,
they're supposed to come, they're supposed to have had elections in June to have new members, right? They're supposed to come every other month. during the school year.
Right.
So every 2 months is what they're supposed to come with.
And report to us? Like,
well-
more than they do at the beginning of the meeting?
Well, it's not report, it's raising topics, right?
Every other month?
That's what, if we look at the state law, that's what it's supposed to be. So,
I
you
thought
know,
it was quarterly.
it's sometimes hard to achieve, obviously, as last year was. If you're filling it, let's have a quick conversation. I don't want to have it in public
fine.
necessarily.
Yeah.
To give you some feedback on a little bit of things to think about there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Not for you, just for the process.
Yeah.
Understood.
Having
Yeah.
had to run it the first couple of years and there were some good and some bad that if you know how to navigate it, it will help you.
Yeah,
Okay.
it can be challenging. I think it is not a surprise that many school committees don't seem to have any semblance of a student advisory committee,
Yeah.
because it has to be pretty actively managed. So, all right, so we'll leave that one as is. I'll let the two of you, kind of connect on best practices to help move that forward. So what I have is Jeffrey will become the liaison to the Board of Library Trustees and FinCom. Tom will move off of FinCom. Laura will go to Children's Cabinet. Jeffrey will take my seat on Policy Subcommittee, but treat it as an actual seat, not a break glass in case of emergency seat. And then, Tom, are we with you on bylaw? Is that where we landed?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Jeffrey, is that too much to pile on your plate? I can take the library one if that would, if you feel like that's an overwhelming amount that we just gave you.
Library is a true liaison, you're on the distribution for their packets. It's
Right.
not a,
Okay.
it's not one we
So,
attend regularly.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was going to get nominated
Yeah.
as chair of the policy.
Okay.
Committee, so, yeah,
Congratulations.
You don't have to, we can talk about it,
The good
right?
news is that's not on our agenda tonight, so it hasn't happened. It's just we're just making jokes here.
What about,
I mean, so if you're interested in libraries, then sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead and take that
just
one.
totally up to you, but if you were suddenly
library,
like,
I'm gonna give him audit, so.
Oh, boy.
I think there's a pattern, Jeffrey. They're giving you people,
Audit meets once a year at the end of May.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Celebration Committee, what was there was some celebration trust. Is that different from the Celebration Committee that you sent me to?
The Celebration Committee and the Celebration Trust are different, but
things,
off the top of
okay.
my head, I could not tell you the difference.
Okay.
But they are different things.
So there was, you named me to the Celebration Trust Committee, and I went to that one meeting. So in terms of things that don't appear on this list, the Wellness Committee and the Celebration Trust should be added to our list.
The last time I remember there being something active in Celebration Committee, I think it was you a few years ago. Do you remember, what that was even in relation to? It was it felt like a one-off.
The one before that was Reading 375 or whatever that was.
Oh, that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think I was on.
It was Gene way back.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
I was
that would've
like,
been-
I
yeah,
was
that
on
would've been
school committee then,
2019.
but-
And for a while, we had, for the longest time, we had a non-member as our member there. I want to say, I'm seeing him in my head, and I can't put a name to his face. Ed Blodgett.
Yeah.
He was our liaison in that space, but Everett Blodgett was our liaison in that space. But
All right, I'll do a little bit of homework on this one and see if it's the same thing or
I just don't know how
not.
often it comes up.
Yeah, either way, it's, it's sort of when the town wants to, host a big event, in recognition of sort of the town's history, essentially, that's a celebration trust anyway, right? If I remember correctly, like that's sort of the framing,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they had some money that, and that they then dispersed to run
to
some,
support like
yeah,
large-scale,
yeah, like the
town-
tree lighting, I think was one of
yeah,
the.
yeah, so.
Although, I think the tree lighting people didn't get an application in by the deadline, so.
Yeah,
So they were like, okay, now, so other things like that. I think
well, now there's a tree lighting and a menorah lighting.
yeah, right.
yeah, all right. So I'll do a little bit of homework on this one and try to confirm whether those are the same thing or separate things. What's your sense, Jeffrey, having attended that meeting? Is it, I didn't think
I
we
mean, the
expected.
Celebration Trust was, it's a once a year.
Once a year, yeah,
Quick meeting, hour or two.
So Sarah, if it's the same thing, I think you're probably off the hook for now, because Jeffrey's already done it for this year, so. Okay. All right, I will document that. I'll get the updates to the various chairs and town staff that facilitate these things, and so hopefully folks start getting on the correct invites and distribution lists and so forth.
Can I make one recommendation here for my
Please.
own learnings and just this conversation? Can you summarize, just as a quick memo in the next packet, all of the changes?
Yes.
And anything that we missed?
Happy to do so. I will,
That way we have it as a record for the next one we're going through this.
what I'll do is I'll email the new alignments to this group so that they get included in correspondence.
That works.
That's I think that counts as informational, because it's me making appointments, not something we're voting on, so.
Add the wellness committee.
Add the wellness committee, yes, thank you. Add wellness committee.
Take notes.
I think the celebration, I think we used it, like, I think I started out with, like, Fall Street Fair and like, just coordinating those events until we sort of reached a point where we didn't feel like we were serving a purpose. You know, now the Fall Street Fair is not even happening.
Right.
Sadly, so.
Okay. All right, so next order of business is a potential Mulberry Forest School approval process. You know, I don't know, 3, 4 of us were on the committee the last time this came around. I don't know how familiar Jeffrey and Laura, you are with this situation.
Oh, I was there for that.
You were there for that?
Yeah.
She was,
Was it?
yeah.
Oh, I thought it was longer ago than
No.
that. Okay. That's right, it was last summer, it was last August.
No.
I was at the beach in North Carolina. Fantastic way to spend a night of my vacation at the beach. And Jeffrey, you were probably engaged, and so you all remember the context. They reached back out in January, I want to say, and said, hey, just heads up, we want to sort of revisit this. I think I offered at the time, okay, great, when are you available? Carla and I will meet with you and sort of hear, what you're thinking and what's changed since August, and sort of figure out a path forward. There were some, long periods where they sent an email or, and I got back to them after a few weeks, or I sent an email and they got back to me after a few weeks. Long story short is, recently, like last week, they followed up and said, they'd like to get on our agenda, or have a discussion about getting on our agenda to seek approval again. The one thing that I know that they shared is that they have firmed up Camp Rice Moody as a location, which was, one of the major areas of concern the last time was sort of the, appropriateness, I guess, of the location that they were targeting at the time. So, they've at least attempted to address at least one of those concerns. I did respond to Mary from the Forest School and essentially say, we'll have a discussion tonight about sort of what the committee's, I don't know how I phrased it exactly, but what the committee would be looking for, in a follow-up discussion before considering approval again, and, potentially schedule that for late August, but that would give them time to respond to anything that we surface this evening that we'd want to sort of hear or learn about. So I can pause there. I can share, I've had more time to think about this than the rest of you have, so I can also share some initial thoughts, but I'll pause there and see what immediate response folks have.
I'm trying to remember what the sort of list of issues that was a long discussion when it happened at the meeting, and I know that the sort of the occupancy of the building was part of it, but there were a number of
The site was
other.
a piece of it. There were some, I'd say inconsistencies in, some questions about the licensure and the approach they were taking there. Some, inconsistencies or apparent inconsistencies, at least in sort of their nonprofit status and
Yeah.
some of those things. So some of the legal requirements. And then, I think probably the biggest one was some concern about, kind of the background of one of
Yeah.
the key individuals involved.
Yeah.
I don't know, are there other major buckets?
That last one is my biggest concern,
Yeah.
still remains my biggest concern. So that, to me, needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form for me to say yes.
I will say, at least on their website, I believe he's still listed as a member of their
Well,
advisory board or board of directors or whatever it might be.
needs to be directly addressed, in my mind. There was some pretty significant overlap with a pretty significant problem that he tried to whitewash underneath the table, right, in that last conversation. And then he got really offended by it, and the lady doth protest too much. And, yeah, so, to me, that's what needs to be addressed. I think you've addressed the biggest issue. The other biggest issue, obviously, we were all worried about, can you use the building? It's not your building, all this other stuff. They now seem to have a rental agreement, which is fine. They can have the kids inside when it's pouring snow outside or whatever else like that. Obviously, they still want to be outside, and conceptually with what the Mulberry is. I think they can address the licensing issue. They can address the nonprofit issue. They can address all those other things. But if they don't address the fundamental other issue that we worked our way around, they haven't changed the real problem.
Thoughts from others?
Can you remind me, can they operate younger children without our approval, or they can,
They need,
or they can't do?
to be certified as a preschool, they would need like EC,
They need
EEC approval, yeah.
What they're looking for is that required K plus for the 6+ crowd, right, for approval.
For it to count as compulsory, yeah. And there was a question at the time that we had, which, they may not technically need it, if they're operating in a sort of a co-op model, homeschool / co-op model, they may not technically need it, but I think, for sort of validation, legitimacy, I think they were primarily seeking it for those reasons.
The other issue that was of the time was whether or not we'd be forced into paying for busing,
Right.
That's right, yeah.
right? Which, as far as I read, is still a requirement. If somebody, a parent that was in town, wanted their child to go to that school, it would be our obligation, regardless of the fact that it's not a public school, if it's outside the 2-mile radius, to get them there. And so the financial challenge for us that would come with that is also something that needs to be addressed. Phil, are you trying to say something, or you got issues?
I think it's back.
No? Okay.
Glad to mute myself, sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so what I'd suggest is, I'll let her know, she can watch this video or watch that video from August, that, essentially it's the same concerns that we'd want them to address. I'll ask them to provide, anything they feel might be helpful in writing in advance that we can distribute. We'll give them the opportunity to do a brief presentation to address, some of those specific questions as well. And sort of see where we land. I'll also try to refresh my memory between now and then, maybe check in with Colby again. I know we kicked the tires on that busing question, whether it would be enforceable for us to sort of reach have an agreement in place that any busing that was required, that they would offset the cost of, or what have you. So I'll refresh my memory on that. It's been 11 months at this point, and I don't remember where we landed exactly. One other thing that was on my mind that we didn't get this far last time, but the sort of the core ask of a school committee in approving this is about validating sort of the appropriate, the educational appropriateness, or that it's educationally comparable. I forget what the language exactly is in the DESE guidelines, but it's essentially evaluating, like, are they providing an appropriate education to students that attend the school. And it's very clear that that's the school committee's responsibility to determine. So we can't, outsource the decision per se, but we can go down the path of, like appointing someone to do some homework and some research and provide a recommendation to us.
It's like a consultant, basically?
A consultant, or it could be a staff member. We could ask Dr. Hardy, for instance, to go spend a half day with their team and, examine the curriculum and sort of provide a recommendation. So, again, we don't have to decide tonight, but that has been something that's on my mind, because what they presented from a purely academic perspective seemed reasonable, rational. It's obviously a different approach than we take in a public school, which is, sort of the point of a school like this, which is fine. But it's not, at the depth of, show me how you address these standards, we didn't get into that depth, and I'm not sure we need to necessarily, but I'll just throw that out there for consideration, that maybe that's a path we want to go down, is seeking some support from the learning and teaching team to do some validation as well.
And if I recall correctly, Sean, it's been a while, they provided some of that for the preschool age groups, but they did not provide any of that for the actual elementary age groups in terms of how that mapped to our Common Core standards, et cetera. So that would definitely be an ask, and I remember making a note about that.
Okay, yeah, we can ask for that to be submitted in advance as well, so we can review that.
So what grades are they thinking to do?
K through 6, right?
Yeah,
K
I
through
think it's K
5.
through 6. K,
Or pre-K through,
yeah,
pre-K.
it's definitely
K
pre-K.
through 5,
It was there were like
Our approval would only be for K through
6.
K through 6, yeah.
Because it's
So-
the busing age that matters in this
Yeah.
particular case.
And just in terms of, if in grade 7, do we have these students who were at the Mulberry School coming in to Parker or
Yes,
Coolidge?
potentially.
And
Potentially,
then,
In any grade, I mean, right,
Yeah.
and,
Right.
Go there for first
Yeah.
grade, second grade, and come to us in third grade, yeah.
right,
and I think at the time, at least last year, they were applying, none of the students who they had sort of
We're ready.
slotted were actually Reading residents, so
Ah,
it wasn't,
okay.
it
It was a
wasn't.
very small number to begin with.
Yeah, there was, certainly in that first year, it was gonna, I don't know if they've expanded in,
Right.
in year 2 with a bigger space, but, or a different space anyway. But it is a fair point, right? That to me is why that educational sort
Yeah,
of
right.
equivalency to some degree, again, it's not gonna be exactly the same, and obviously the delivery
But
model is very
if they come
different.
in and haven't learned to read.
Right.
Because they've been, reading leaves and the nature, which is, an interesting, I'm being a little facetious
Picturing
here,
the
but,
movie
right?
Nell here.
I mean, paper comes from trees.
Yeah.
Well, you can learn a lot about nature. I can't identify,
get it.
that tree versus that tree, right? But
yeah.
Yeah, so,
That's a certain, that we would then, Reading Public Schools would then have to bring that student up to a comparable level.
Well, that goes back to Sarah's point about
Yeah.
Yeah.
how they're going to beat the standards.
okay, so we'll ask for that to be among what they submit in advance, is more clarity around sort of the curriculum and the educational program at the beyond the preschool level, and then keep on the table for discussion the next time around whether we want to do this contingent on some sort of validation recommendation from Dr. Hardy or others within the administration. So
Are they expecting to hear from us before September, though? I mean,
I told her, I told her that it wouldn't be something we'd have it on agenda to vote before August, and
Okay.
I think she's got it, they've got to understand at this point that there's a possibility it may not be something that gets approved in one meeting, given the
Gotcha, okay.
range of questions we had last time, so I
Gotcha.
think they're obviously hopeful. But again, it's not clear to me that they need it to operate in the form they want to operate. I think it's a legitimacy thing, is partially why they're pursuing it.
Well, it means the kids in their school are going to schools that matter, that are measured as schools.
Yeah.
Right, so it could be, our non-approval could limit their growth, so if they come and they say we have 2 students, it could be because their students would not register as students by going to that school.
Right. So, okay. All right, so let's move on then to our final agenda item, which is discussing the override process and the school committee role in that process. So, as Tom alluded to earlier, the select board has a series of meetings scheduled to sort of, organize around their path forward on really setting an override amount. It's August 4th, Tom, I think, is the last of those meetings. So August 4th is the meeting where I think they expect to actually set an override amount. Most of us attended that FinCom joint meeting, was that last week, 2 weeks ago? Most of us attended that meeting, and so you all heard sort of where we are. That sounds like something in the range of 7.5 to 14 million, potentially multiple options, is kind of where Sharon was sort of pointing the group. Unclear at this point where they're actually going to land. So, I wanted to sort of open it up for a few angles here tonight, but one of them is, One of them is just to sort of remind everyone that you do have, in your capacity as a school committee member, as an individual school committee member, the, ability to advocate for things that you believe in. So certainly you're welcome to reach out to the select board if you have an opinion and a perspective as an individual and as a school committee member. Once something is on a ballot, we also can, as individuals, can advocate for it and take a position. As a school committee, we can inform the public. In fact, it's part of our responsibility to inform the public about things like, if the override doesn't pass, here's what we expect would happen, in the schools. There's a fine line between that and advocacy. While on school committee time, using public meeting, in a public meeting, that sort of thing, we do have to sort of steer clear of advocacy, but can certainly speak to the facts of, decisions that we're making and decisions that we're anticipating having to make. So there's a role for us to play here, but the very near-term piece is what the select board is the only one tasked to do, which is to determine the number that they want to put on the ballot. Go ahead, Laura.
At that meeting, there was quite a bit of discussion about them coming back to the community with some more concrete details about sort of what's on the line, if this passes,
That's right.
These things are going to go. If this passes, these things are going to go. Do we have more of that guidance yet?
Yeah, so that's sort of where I was going to go next. So
Okay.
in that meeting, you all saw there was that delineation of, Jane had her level 2 budget.
Yeah.
And then there was the sort of, if an override fails, what falls out. Among the things that falls out is the $917,000 that they're estimating that we would need in our budget to maintain level services, right? And so essentially what that means is that becomes the budget gap that we would have to solve for. That wouldn't be available to us in the FY28 budget. So
At minimum.
at a minimum,
It's possible that more is a gap.
it could be more significant than that, based on what they decide to use for free cash, based on, any number of other factors. But that's the starting point, is we lose $917,000 that's assumed as necessary for a level services budget. I do think, we don't have to do it before the August 4th meeting, but certainly, to support informing the community prior to a November ballot item, we're going to need to have some discussion and some focused discussion on what do we anticipate, at least thematically, what do we anticipate are the areas that we would impact if we needed to cut $917,000 from the budget. I think it goes without saying that there probably are some savings in office supplies and, some things like that where we can tighten things a little bit, that'll get you maybe a few tens of thousands of dollars. But the vast majority of our budget is in people. And so, we're going to have to identify what do we expect the impact to be, some of the impacts to be if we have to cut X dollars from our budget, if we have to cut X times $2 from our budget, where are some of those places. So I would expect that over our next handful of meetings, August and into September, we probably need to have some conversations around what some of those potential areas are and have some prioritization discussions. Dr. Turner, please.
So I've had, so I said day 6, but I've had 6 days of meetings on this topic, and including today, in which I met with town manager and all the department chairs, as well as individual meeting with with Ms. Wellman, and then meeting with our leadership central team, with the finance team of the town. And so after those meetings, there's a few things that I can share with you publicly that will be ahead of the finance committee meeting next week. It is clear that we do need to sort of consider, to Tom's point, of what's beyond the $917,000. And so I want to prepare the community that the presentation, that there will be certainly considerations of sort of what cuts could possibly look like. It's still pretty general, and I think this will be a question for you all, how detailed you wish to be. But there will be a part of the presentation that talks about the balance of employees in Reading Public Schools in comparison to the town. There's more employees on the school side than there is on the town side. And what is the decision going to be, and what's the process of that decision in terms of parity between the school side and the town side? And so, I think a question for you is, in our preparation for you, how deep should we go? And so I can share with you is that we're going on the assumption that we're looking at about $100,000 per employee at this point. And so, for example, $1 million cut, which would be about 10 employees, a $2 million cut would be 20 employees, a $30 million cut would be 30 employees. And obviously that, there are, to your point, cuts that could be non-personnel, but it would be helpful to understand sort of like how deep you want us to consider in terms of coming back to you. And then what is that, in terms of sort of like, what's the balance that you want to look at, and what's the detail you would like. So I think I shared with you in my presentation when I interviewed for this, is that this has been my life for 10 years of being able to share sort of what cuts could look like. And so I do have familiarity with it, and I feels like in talking to our team, we would want some guidance from you, which is, we are pretty early in terms of presenting on an FY28 budget. And if we get very detailed about specific positions, we're obviously, those impact human beings, and it's a pretty early time to be talking about that. But also, the less detailed we are, the less information the community is getting. And so I think that's a pertinent question for you all here. But I do think that we want to think about what I just said, which is how deep beyond the $1 million you would like to know, and how detailed you'd like us to be to share with you. I think those are, and where are you lying in terms of what you think would be an appropriate balance between the town side and the school side. I think ultimately that would be a decision between Mrs. Wellman and I in terms of making a final decision, but I certainly would want your input in terms of what you think is an appropriate balance. As we believe it's about 60-40 in terms of employees, but I think your input would be paramount in terms of thinking about what we would be looking for. I think those are some early enough discussions.
Go ahead, Tom.
So, as we discussed, we have to do a lot more than we've done so far. There is no way that an override is going to pass without sufficient detail. And I don't think waiting until September to have those conversations is anywhere near sufficient either. That would give like a month of time from an advocacy perspective before an election, right? By the time we really look at that, I think we need to figure out how we bring ourselves together more between now and August 5th to have some real conversations. August 4th, really, to be able to inform or advise more with the select board and whatnot. Finance committee meeting next week, okay. I personally, and I know why, because there's been some, obviously, turnover, there's been some other things that have happened. I personally felt wholly unprepared at the last finance committee meeting, and I don't think we were properly notified of what we should have been preparing, frankly. Or we were excused for one reason or another. And I don't think we should go into much further with that kind of approach. I understand your concern about not wanting to name, people or specific things, and I think that's a fair point. I'm not looking for what happened last time when we say we're going to cut a specific department at a specific level. I don't want to do that necessarily. But I do think we need to have a more conscious effort of what our other revenue sources are. Do we, for example, say, we're going to have to recommend that we take everything out of the Special Education Reserve Fund, and that's $1 million. It means we would have no more reserves after that, but it's a bridge year for another chance of an override again, or something else like that, right? I don't think we just automatically go towards cuts. We have to look at everything that we have available. The reasons we built up these things on over the last couple of years is to provide for a rainy day, and guess what? It's raining. Right? So let's figure out what else we have as options as well. It needs to be a holistic view. Okay? We do want to keep reserve funds, which is what the 917,000 is allowing us to do, but if you lose the 970,000 and you use reserve funds, you're almost netted off. And then there's other things that we can talk about that if it becomes 1.5 million, if it becomes 2 million, if it becomes others. I would also caution that we shouldn't just take $100,000 as the number, because we know contractually there's a requirement about how you lay off people, right? And generally, you're going to have to lay off your less experienced staff first, which is going to be less expensive, right?
Which means you have to lay off more of them.
Which means you have to lay off more of them. So that's another thing I want us to be conscious of. Do not take round numbers. We have to be more thoughtful in this process. We have the data, so data is not our problem. It's the thought and the time that we have to put into this, and it's a tough time for you coming right in the door, Henry, as you think about this, Dr. Turner, sorry, to figure this out with what else is, we're working through as well. So I think we need to step back and say, what are we talking about from class sizes perspective? If certain things happen, at what levels are we talking about that? Can we afford a collapse in certain ways? If so, where? Not naming names or whatnot. Maybe we can say, okay, there's across the elementary school, we can collapse 1 first and 1 third grade, like whatever. I'm not saying what it is, but we need to be smart about it, and office supplies are not going to get us there, right? I know Sean wasn't saying that on purpose. It was just kind of, there's some small things we can pull, but that's going to be big in terms of other things. So to answer your question from a school-town mix, this is, people were going to say, oh, schools and town work together, and we do work together. But we have a mandatory requirement to do certain things. Some of the town bodies do not have a mandatory requirement. We have to be conscious of that as well. Like, what is our requirement from a state perspective to do certain things? Doesn't mean we have to have all of the things we do, but there are certain things that we have a mandatory requirement to do that other bodies at the town level do not have a mandatory requirement. I hate to say it this way, but they're nice to haves. So we have to be conscious of that in this conversation too. Without trying to offend anybody, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but we have to be conscious of it. So a pure 60-40 mix, to me, does not apply. We have to have the conversation about what is the right thing across these different bodies to achieve what we need to achieve. And where does that happen, right? So I think there's going to be more art to this than just a thin red line of 40-60. And a lot more negotiation and influence management as we work our way through this than just a quick and dirty number.
Could I respond to one thing that?
Of course.
So I do think right now the $100,000 is the right place for us to think about, but we would like to come back to you with averages for all of our collective bargaining units so that we can get more detailed. And then Phil, I just want to compliment him and something that he raised today, which was we also have to consider unemployment benefits, and that's something he gave back to the town on in terms of thinking about. And so it does. The average would actually will be higher, and I think your question is right in terms of we don't, we had, I believe, 2 retirements last year, and so if we're just looking at like open positions, there aren't going to be a lot of expensive people that we would just be not filling. It could potentially be real people who are less paid and lower on the scale. So I think you're asking the right question, and I think that could be a question that we'd want from you is what level of detail do you want in terms of do you want multiple averages? Do you want to know what an average teacher is, average para? I think those are guidance would be helpful. I would also say what I'm used to is a lot of detail so that we can make informed decisions. And so I've asked, in Newton, I was very used to the school committee having a very thick book called the class size report, which was an analysis of really looking like all of the questions that the school committee over 30 years had asked around class sizes and around building space. So I've already started to ask for that, some of that data so that we can present to you in terms of what it looks like in our school communities. so that we can start to make informed decisions. But I'd want to know more questions from you so that we can start to pull some of that data and present it to you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because you mentioned the 917,000, but is that still on the assumption that that a very high level of free cash would be put toward the fiscal year 28 budget? Because I had a number much higher in my head, but I guess it depends on what FinCom is willing to put.
Do you remember the?
I had a number
Nine-
that potentially like 6 million was at risk.
917 gets us to like a 5.25% for us, and the town would be at 3 point something, right? Which is flipping what's happening this past year, this coming year, where we got money taken away from us, right? But it is still a large, number, which is why, if they want to stay above the 7%, it might be more than 917,000, right? So the free cash number, Jeffrey, you may remember off the top of your head, I think it might be 6.5 million or something to get that number.
Yeah.
But that then puts us at like right at 7% or something like that,
Which threatens our bond
depending
rating.
upon regeneration. Like, we have no
Regeneration,
regeneration number yet, so
Okay.
if the regeneration number comes in low, we might have to adjust it. If it comes in high, we might be okay to stay at that 7%. The other thing that we didn't really talk about at the last financial forum is we've also recently heard that 10% is the number, right? From municipal bond rating agencies that they look for. So we're likely going to go below that 10% at the 6.5 million number, and we need to figure out, FinCom has to make an assessment. Are we worried about 10%? Are we worried about 7%? And based upon that, what is our free cash recommendation if we don't get an override?
I will,
Okay, So we will get that number though because I feel like 917 is much too low based on
I
the
agree.
conversations that have been happening.
I think you'll learn on, at the FinCom presentation, sort of what the choices are, and I would say that on the school impact, that we would be wanting to look at potentially $3 or $4 million, what that would look like in terms of cuts.
So just, Dr. Turner, in response to your question about detail, I think, for me at least, more detail is always better. I think that with what Tom was saying about our role in terms of information dissemination, the more that we can tell people about what's at stake, the more likely we are to reach people. I think, another question that I would have is there a way to think about how budget cuts would affect not only things like class sizes and personnel, but also potentially athletics and other extracurricular activities? Because I think that that is a place where people feel a lot of passion, and I think that, I don't want to approach the problem from the, trying to scare people perspective or anything, but I think that again, the more that we can make people realize here is what's on the line, and that's not necessarily just academic, but can also affect other aspects of their kids' school experience, I think that's a lever worth pulling.
I believe, was it Holliston? There was a town that had an override fail, and they eliminated sports.
Yeah, I think if we only are talking about what's happening in the classroom, I think we're leaving out a big piece of what people care about
Yeah.
with the schools.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said before. The 60-40 thing, I have to sort of understand a little bit more what's behind that. The historical split has been 64-36 or 66-34.
66 or 67, 33, 34.
Yeah, so it's been more like 2/3, 1/3 than 60-40. Now that's
Which is not good for us. We want the thing to go the other direction.
yeah, it means we have a greater share of the cuts
I
potentially.
believe that's in terms of staffing, not necessarily in terms of
That's
resources.
what I was getting at, is like, staffing versus dollars may not be 1-to-1, so maybe that's consistent. I just, was just reacting to it. I think, I agree with Tom's point, Laura's, everybody's points, but Tom and Laura both made the point, more information is better. We do have to make this real. We have to make this very real. And I think, I would err on the side of the fact that may create some uncomfortable situations for people who may hear that their job is being impacted. Because I think it's more important to inform the community about what's going to happen or likely to happen, at the end of the day. Now, there are instances where we can make the impact clear without being really specific about it's this bucket of roles. Impacts to class sizes at a particular level is an example. I'll pull out but there are other examples, and I'll use this one because this couldn't be an example. But if we were to say we were going to eliminate food services, right? Unfortunately, you can't say that. You can't put that on the table without it being clear that there's a group impacted there. Now, of course, we can't and won't eliminate food services. We have to feed children. So that's not on the table. But, I think where we can, if we can, sort of make the impact to the student experience clear without, being super specific about the individuals may be impacted, that's the thing to do. In other instances, it's going to be unavoidable. I also think from a process perspective, I'm just thinking about how to sort of move this forward, because I'm hearing you, Tom, your point about, we probably need to sort of have an opportunity to collectively discuss, our priorities and, as a group prior to, getting too far down the line here, so that as soon as there is a ballot question, hopefully an advocacy group pops up, they have the information that they need. My suggestion would be, if you could work with the team on identifying some of the potential paths, and I know Dr. Milczewski had already been working on this, and Phil as well. If we could work with the team on identifying some of the, places, pools we could fish in, so to speak, to get to a $3 or $4 million number, probably either individual or small group conversations with us, so we don't have any quorum issues or, open meeting law issues, thank you. And then, that'll give you a starting point to bring kind of this is what I heard / am recommending, as a sort of prioritization set or a priority set. And then, maybe we get a meeting, could probably be virtual only if we need to. I'm sure folks will have vacations and stuff, but maybe we try to get a meeting prior to August 4th or 5th, where we can have some discussion and ideally reach some agreement on some prioritization.
Just thinking about, so I think that's fair. Thinking about the presentations that I saw from 2018 and what I'm used to is starting to think about what are our values and priorities in terms of preserving. I think also, the athletics one comes up because it's a question of I think we need to be honest. If we are going to put something out there, that actually means that it would be cut. Yeah. And not just saying something and then pulling back. Because I think that really impacts trust with the community. And I think the question around detail is what's the level of detail and when? And so if you'd like us to come forward in the next few weeks, we could maybe share buckets, secondary, elementary school, student services, as opposed to naming specific positions. And I think I certainly like the idea of having a smaller presentations, even maybe prior to that.
Sorry, Dr. are we done? I thought you were done. I apologize.
Yeah.
A couple other things here that I think we need to be talking about in this conversation, not just from our perspective, but across the town, right? There's an ask, for example, to hire a therapeutic counselor for the senior center, right? And whatnot. Well, guess what? We have a lot of staff that have that capability here in the school system, right? Now, they're going to be working in the school system 9 to 3, but if they were willing and wanted to augment that money and work another 3 hours at the senior center or something like that, or if we can split them and they can be half-time with us, half-time there, there has to be some creative ideas at the town level too that we're looking at. How do we share more, right? We have to start having some of those conversations that we can apply in certain places here, right? We have some phenomenal staff that their capabilities and skills could expand to a bigger level if they wanted to, and if it meant more financial related income to them potentially, as an example. Not sure that anybody would apply, but it has to be discussed, right? Just to say I'm going to go hire somebody when, by the way, that's a really small pool already, and you might actually poach from the schools in doing so. So we need to think about how that works townwide. The same thing I would say for other departments, right? I love our HR team. I love our finance team. But from a town and school perspective, do we need to start talking, how do we do this, more effectively? Is there something else there that can be achieved? I don't know the answer, and I know Phil's here, but, you know, I just want, I mean, those are the kind of things we have to talk about as well. We already do it with facilities. Does it have to stop with facilities? I don't know, right? As we work through some of these kind of conversations. And the last thing I would say is, Sean, I really think we need to kind of double check what we can do as a body, right? That email I sent you that came from Mask implies that we can have meetings that advocate as a body, right? Now, not just as individuals. And so I think there's been some change in the conflict of interest laws about our ability, or ruling changes or interpretation changes that have come out about our ability. Because we are an elected body, we're expected to advocate for certain things, that we should have a conversation with what our limitations really are. And if we, you know, as we go through this over the next, ideally, few weeks, I don't think we can, like, we have to really get through it quickly. And I don't want to be surprised at the FinCom next week either. Like, if we have some ideas, I want to hear more about them between now and then. I don't want to see them the first time there, just to be 100% clear as well. So if we need to start planning, you know, come school year, that we're going to have, you know, let's learn about the upcoming override sessions that we're publicly posted for and doing presentations on, so people are aware, right? I think that's what the way I read the updated materials, but I think, you know, we should get more information about that to be 100% clear and sure, so we don't run afoul of anything. And I want to be on the front foot here, not the back foot.
Can I say something?
Of course. I'm not looking for hands at this point.
Okay,
This
sorry.
is free-flowing discussion. Go for it.
So I agree. I think we're going to need to get specific. And it might not be, you know, we're targeting this first grade teacher, but it might be, we would be cutting this many elementary, you know, or this, you know, we'd be cutting from these grades across the district. And that's what it's going to do to class sizes once we cut those positions. That, you know, if we're cutting this many people from the high school, what does that mean? Are we cutting programs? Are we cutting the ability to offer certain courses? What would the impact be on class sizes? People, as a general public, will not respond to, like, 3 to 4 million means nothing to the average person. Like, they aren't gonna realize, like, that is huge implication. Like, the majority of town does not understand that we balanced the fiscal year 27 budget down 800,000. Like, they don't have a concept of that, or what that means, that we were already working with a deficit in the current budget that we're in. So I do think we have to be very specific about what kind of bodies we're talking about, and then what the student impact is going to be. Because the other thing, and I'm sure you run into this, you know, teachers are going to say, oh, there's room in administration to cut. And administrators are going to say, we run so lean, you can't possibly remove any administrators. So I don't want to run into this where we're, like, pitting, you know, people against people. I don't want to be pitting seniors versus school parents. Like, I just, I think this has to be, you know, yes, we're responsible for the school piece of this, but I think collectively we have to be talking about how this is going to impact, you know, this debt that we are walking into is going to impact everyone. But I do think it's not enough to be general. We just won't get people's support behind it. And it's just too broad to comprehend if you just say, like, oh, you have to shave money off the budget. I think if there's anything we learned in 2017-18, it was being very specific, so that we can help educate people. You know, maybe another advocacy group will pop up. I am not holding my breath, but that would be great. And I'm happy to help anyone behind the scenes in any way that is within my role as a school committee member. But just given the timing of all of this, our timeline is just tight. And the only other thing I just want to say publicly is, I do not support the idea that like we would go through all of this just because we assume it's going to fail and then we will do another one. And I've heard people say that, and I just think it's incredibly unfair to all the work that is already happening. And I hope that we as a body can approach this as something that we want to see pass the first time so that we can go into the budget season knowing exactly what we're working with and hopefully not facing devastating cuts. But I don't subscribe to the idea that this is like a false charade, just so that it can fail and then we have to make the cuts and then people say, oh wow, they really did those cuts. So I hope that we can get behind the idea that like, let's get this one and done and let's do it right.
I thought it was really interesting at the joint committee meeting, from my perspective at least, that one of the items that seemed to get the most people's attention the most was the idea of losing the weekly recycling. And to me, that is telling in terms of how people react to something that's going to directly impact them. So again, coming back to the level of detail, I think just the more we can make people realize how they will be directly impacted, the more likely we are to succeed.
It's weekly recycling or 4 teachers, I think is the trade-off, wasn't that? Something of 400,000?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's a very fair ask in terms of connecting it to class size and getting to that level of detail, and I think we can get, we've already started that work, and we can get that to you in the next few weeks. I also have asked Phil and Kate to start to do analysis around proportionality around the district in terms of where are we resourced equitably or equally across different levels, and to be able to present that information to you so that you're informed in terms of, and how we can make decisions around values. Like if there is more money allotted in elementary versus secondary, I want you to be informed about that, or in student services versus learning and teaching, I want you to be informed about that. So we're already kind of doing that analysis for you.
One more, maybe one more, who knows? I'm going to ask Aaron and Sean and Sarah to harken back to when we listened to a podcast when Tom first got started. Dr. Turner's since listened to that podcast as well, called Turning It Around. I think I shared it with you. I can share it with you too. One of the things in that podcast that I took away as important was that it's not always class size that matters. It's adult to student ratio that matters. So I want us to be careful, and there's also been lots of studies since then, about class size conversations, and I want us to be thinking about adult to student ratio conversations, because that may also play very heavily into the financials of this. And so as we think through this, let's also make sure that we're looking at this strategically based upon studies and academic data that says what actually impacts a student's learning as we go through this. In addition to, I think Laura has a good point. What about extracurriculars and stuff like that too? But let's make sure that the things we're cutting, if we have to cut, are those that have the least impact on student learning, or we can otherwise support student learning in a different way. Aaron made a pretty important point about some of the administration. We've made some pretty big investments in administration to support student learning because the science says it does, right? The studies say it do, and it's proving out for us. So we have to be careful about that conversation as we go through this too. Like, look at the data. Where does having the staff in the right place at the right position impact student learning appropriately? And let's make sure we use this in an informed, educated way as we think about where we might have to make some adjustments.
Can I make a slightly tangential comment?
Go for
I know
it.
we're all probably ready to go home, but the other thing I was thinking about is just from a revenue perspective. We were talking about how the food services and catering is potentially a good source of money coming into the district. I remember at some point in one of the discussions that we were having, the idea of something like advertisements around the
Yes.
football field had
Yes.
come up, and I'm wondering whether we as a body, whether there's more that we can be doing in terms of creative brainstorming for ways to generate new sources of revenue that might potentially offset any cuts that we might have to make. And I don't know, what the procedures for that are, what the appetite for that is, or what the community appetite for something like that would be. But given kind of the direness of the situation that we seem to be in, it seems like something that's at least worth talking about.
Yeah, I think we should certainly be open to all of that. My view, and I know you're just using an example, but my view of that one in particular is you need a lot of those before it starts to add
Yeah.
up to something meaningful, or at least something that changes sort of the fundamentals of your situation. I shouldn't say meaningful. But, that's where we are. We need to be creative in thinking about all the potential revenue streams. And, we can sell naming rights, we can effectively sell naming rights to buildings, right? There's all kinds of things that we can do. So, we need to have the Coca-Cola library or something, but yeah.
Have to dename it first, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
In certain cases, we would, in
Well,
other
just add the-
cases, there's no name to it, so.
Yeah, whatever. So, we're gonna need to be creative. There's part of me that says, though, in the near term, I think the focus is on understanding what the impacts are.
Oh,
And then
absolutely.
the secondary order of business is, if we find ourselves in that situation, how creative can we be to offset some of those impacts? Because, there are those opportunities, but again, they're not gonna change the fundamentals of where we are, so.
Can I just say one more thing?
Please.
I do think the $100,000 is important because it helps us to understand that, like, we're not going to be able to just cut supplies
Yeah.
to get there. Just even for one, it will impact positions and mostly would be positions. The other thing I wanted to make sure was shared is that depending on what FinCom recommends, if it is potentially a tiered override, for example, Jane Wellman asked me to think about what would be things that would be add backs. And that's something that happened in the last override, was things that were incentives. And so that's something that we'll also be thinking about. While we're thinking about cuts, we may also be coming to with potential things that would be potential add backs to the budget if a tiered override does occur.
When you say add backs, you mean in addition to what's currently funded?
In addition to what's currently funded.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I didn't get the sense the select board had the appetite for proposing an override, which provides for many net new services, maybe some of the police and fire positions, but,
I think the idea was that people like to vote for
new stuff?
new things and not just things that they already have.
Yeah,
And so that was something for us to consider. So.
okay. Yep. good point.
Elementary Fridays.
Elementary Fridays. It's been on our list forever. I put that right at the top.
Well, I said one more thing, and now I said one more thing, so, again, Laura jogged this, but we also had the conversation, and I thought this is where you were going, about tiering the sports fees.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, all of these have to be looked at, and it puts a lot of burden on the finance team, right? But we've already started some of that work. If this happens, and if athletics stay, we might have to tier sports fees in such a way that means X, right? So,
Or raise all fees.
or raise all fees, right? Or both, right? It may raise all fees and raise especially hockey and football, because they're the most expensive sports. to run.
Facilities rental fees,
Swimming, right?
Swimming.
yeah.
Right.
But
So-
I mean, facilities rental fees for all the rec leagues that use,
Right.
the gyms and everything as well, right?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, and anybody else, exactly, so, which has another trickle-down effect. So anyway, I think we have to look at a lot of different angles here. It's not gonna be easy to distill, but when the time comes as well, we're gonna have to find a way to put it in an easily understandable infographic, right? People like pictures,
Yeah.
so as we think about how we'll market this, it's gonna have to come down to an infographic that shows little people shrinking or something else like that. We have to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine where we say, we have to make up a $3 million gap. There's $2.75 million in cuts we identified and $250,000 of additional revenue that comes in the form of these higher fees, and this is the impact of those fees, right? It means your kid's basketball league is more expensive. It means if your kid is on one of our teams, the user fees are going up, or if they're in a, performing arts program or something, the user fees are going up. So, yeah, I agree. I think it'll have to be the orientation is around the impact, the impact of those cuts or revenue streams versus the specific, bodies that are impacted. So, this is going to be the last thing I'm going to say, but if anybody still wants to keep going, that's fine. Tom, the nuance in what I was getting at in terms of what we can and can't do is it's the use of public resources. So we can take an official position, like we can, as a body, certainly vote that we support this override and think it's necessary and have that statement go out. And, you know, I shared in a couple of forums now the Marblehead example where their select board, FinCom, and school committee made a public commitment to fulfilling sort of the obligations of their, you've been familiar with this, you know, to fulfilling the obligations that they made to the community as a, you know, in support of the override as well. So we can certainly do that. What we can't do, the nuance is we can't, you know, direct the superintendent to go print flyers, you know, using resources and that take an advocacy position. He can print flyers and send them home saying, there's an override on the ballot, you know, here's the impact to the schools if it, you know, here's what happens if it passes, here's what happens if it fails, but it can't be an advocacy position. So when we get to this point, I'll make sure that we get a, you know, a refresher. I think Ivrea did it last time around when we needed one of these, but I'll make sure we get a refresher either from town council or from Colby's team on, you know, what we can and can't do so that we're not, you know, skirting the line there.
Yeah, but even, this memo even implies we can use like our public email, which we were told we couldn't use before. There are other things like that that have evolved that I think we just have to.
It's the use of public resources that I think those things get a little bit tricky, right? You know, it doesn't generate, you know, the use of an email address that already exists doesn't generate a cost for the district in the same way that printing and mailing something does, but you could argue it's a public resource, right? So, you know, I think those are the places where it'll be helpful for us just to get, you know, make sure we get a little bit of clarity. So, but I'll send this to the group. It's, some of you may have already seen it. It was in one of those MASC subscription newsletter things. Tracy Novick, I think, sent it in response to a school committee member that asked some questions about what they can do in their official capacity. So it's helpful clarity. Any other comments for this evening? All right, so in terms of next steps, Dr. Turner, you know, expect that you'll reach out to folks to grab some time to have some discussions in, you know, either solo or in small groups. I will solicit availability probably for us to get, you know, at least one, maybe a couple meetings if necessary. You know, we can plan to do those virtually, but between now and that August 4th date or August 5th date, obviously we're, you know, the FinCom meetings and others that are coming up, I'll work with Olivia to get us posted for those. Tom has one more? No? Oh, okay. I'll work with Olivia to make sure that we get posted for those. So, you know, if folks are able to attend, please do. We'll see how far we can get, how quickly. Welcome to Reading. Your predecessor did not have to deal with an override in week 2.
It's okay.
So, yeah, but we'll get there. All right, if there's nothing else, I will take a final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Laura. Sarah had to drop off, but I think we still technically should do roll call. Tom?
Yes.
Jeffrey?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
And Sean, yes. We're adjourned at 9:08.